The sun hung low over King's Landing, painting the Red Keep in hues of blood and gold. Ned Stark, Lord of Winterfell, knelt in the courtyard before the great sept of Baelor, his hands bound, his honor battered but unbroken. The crowd roared, a beast of 1,000 voices, hungry for the spectacle of a traitor's end. Joffrey Baratheon, the boy king, stood on the platform, his golden curls gleaming, his lips curled into a cruel smile. Beside him, Cersei Lannister's eyes glinted with triumph, while Sansa Stark wept silently, her pleas drowned by the mob. Ned's mind was a storm of regret and resolve. He had confessed to treason to save his daughters, to spare Sansa and Arya the wrath of the Lannisters. But as he knelt, the weight of his choices pressed heavier than the ropes on his wrists. He had failed Robert, failed the realm, and now he faced the executioner's block. Sir Ilyn Payne stepped forward, ice, Ned's own ancestral sword, gleaming in his hands. "Sir Ilyn, do your duty," Joffrey commanded, his voice sharp with glee. The crowd surged, their shouts a deafening tide. Ned closed his eyes, thinking of Winterfell, of Catelyn, of his children. He whispered a prayer to the old gods, and though he doubted they heard him in this city of stone and deceit. But then, a voice cut through the chaos, clear, commanding, and unexpected. "Hold!" The word rang like a bell, silencing the crowd. Ned opened his eyes, his heart pounding. Sir Ilyn froze, the blade hovering above his neck. Joffrey's smile faltered, his face twisting with confusion. Cersei's head snapped toward the source of the voice, her composure cracking. Lord Varys, the Master of Whisperers, stepped forward from the edge of the platform, his silken robe swaying. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with urgency. "Your Grace," he said, bowing deeply, "I beseech you to reconsider this execution. Lord Stark's death will ignite a war that could tear the 7 kingdoms asunder." Joffrey's lip curled. "He's a traitor! He admitted it!" "Indeed, Your Grace," Varys said smoothly, "but a living Stark may serve you better than a dead one. His confession has already secured your throne's legitimacy. Let him take the black, as he requested. Send him to the wall where he can do no harm and his name can quell the North's unrest." Cersei's eyes narrowed. "Varys, this is not your place." But before she could finish, another voice joined the fray. Petyr Baelish, his tone oily and persuasive. "The spider speaks sense, Your Grace. Killing Lord Stark will make him a martyr. The North will rise, and Robb Stark will march with an army. Spare him, and you show mercy, strength, and wisdom." Joffrey hesitated, his childish pride warring with the counsel of his advisors. The crowd, sensing a shift, grew restless, their shouts turning to the murmurs. Sansa's tear-streaked face turned to her betrothed, hope flickering in her eyes. Ned remained still, his breath shallow. He did not trust Varys or Baelish, but their words were a lifeline he could not ignore. If he lived, he could protect his family, rally the North, and perhaps undo the damage he had wrought in this viper's nest. Finally, Joffrey raised a hand, silencing the crowd. "Very well," he spat, as if the words tasted foul. "Lord Stark will take the black. Let him freeze at the wall with the other scum. But his daughters remain here under my protection." Cersei's face tightened, but she said nothing. Varys bowed again, his expression unreadable. Ned was hauled to his feet, his legs trembling, but his resolve hardening. He met Sansa's eyes, giving her a nod that promised he would not abandon her. As the guards dragged him away, he caught a glimpse of Arya in the crowd, her small face fierce and determined. She was safe for now. The blade had been spared, but Ned Stark knew his fight was far from over. The journey to the wall was a grim procession. Ned rode in a cage on a cart, flanked by gold cloaks and Lannister men. His wounds from the fight in the streets of King's Landing ached, and the chains on his wrists chafed his skin. Yet his mind was sharp, turning over the events that had spared him. Varys and Baelish had their own motives. He was no fool to think otherwise, but their intervention had given him time, and time was a weapon he could wield. The convoy moved slowly, hampered by rain and muddy roads. Ned's thoughts were with his family. Robb would have heard of his arrest by now, perhaps even his supposed treason. The boy was young, but he had the Stark blood, and the same stubborn honor that had nearly cost Ned his life. If Robb marched south, as Baelish had warned, the North would bleed. Ned had to reach him, to guide him, to keep the Starks united. On the third night, the convoy camped near the Trident. Ned sat in his cage, staring at the stars through the bars, when a shadow approached. It was one of the guards, a young man with a nervous demeanor. He glanced around, then slipped a small roll of parchment through the bars. "From a friend," the guard whispered before hurrying away. Ned unrolled the parchment, his heart quickening. The message was brief, written in a careful hand. "Trust no one. The game is deeper than you know. Keep your honor, but sharpen your wits. A spider's thread, Varys." Ned burned the note in the small fire near his cage, his mind racing. The spider's words were a warning, but also a reminder. He was still a player in this game, whether he wished it or not. Days later, as the convoy neared the neck, a horn sounded in the distance. The Lannister men drew their swords, shouting orders. Ned peered through the bars, his pulse quickening. Riders emerged from the mist, dozens of them bearing the direwolf banner of House Stark, Robb. The battle was swift and brutal. The Stark men, led by Robb in great number, overwhelmed the Lannister convoy. Ned's cage was shattered open, and Robb himself pulled his father to his feet. The boy's face was a mix of relief and fury, his eyes older than his 17 years. "Father," Robb said, his voice thick, "we thought you were dead." "Not yet," Ned replied, gripping his son's shoulder. "But we've no time for this. The Lannisters will come for us. We must move." Robb nodded, his jaw set. "The North is rising. The Riverlands, too. We'll fight for you, for Sansa, for Arya." Ned's heart swelled, but his mind was cold. "We fight for our family, Robb, but we must be wise. Joffrey holds your sisters. One wrong move and they'll pay the price." As they rode north, Ned learned the extent of the rebellion. Robb had called the banners, and the northern lords had answered. The Tullys, Catelyn's kin, had joined the cause, though Riverrun was under siege by Jaime Lannister. The realm was fracturing, and Ned's survival had only fanned the flames. Winterfell's great hall was a haven of stone and warmth, its walls echoing with the voices of lords and bannermen. Doriden. Ned sat at the high table, his body weary but his spirit unbroken. Robb stood beside him, a young wolf, tempered by war. Catelyn had arrived from Riverrun, her face lined with worry, but her eyes fierce with love. Bran and Rickon, safe within these walls, clung to their father, their innocence a stark contrast to the grim council unfolding. The northern lords were a storm of voices. Greatjaw Number demanded they march south and crush the Lannisters. Rose Bolton, his voice soft and chilling, counseled caution, suggesting they fortify the north and let the south bleed itself dry. Mage Mormont called for vengeance, her bear-like presence commanding respect. Ned listened, his mind weighing each word. "We cannot abandon Sansa and Arya," Catelyn said, her voice cutting through the din. "They are in King's Landing at Joffrey's mercy." "Nor can we kneel to a false king," Robb added. "Joffrey is no Baratheon. He's a Lannister bastard, born of incest." The hall erupted, lords shouting their agreement. Ned raised a hand, silencing them. "Robb speaks truth, but truth alone won't free your sisters or win this war. We need allies, resources, and a plan. The Lannisters are strong, and Tywin is no fool. We must be stronger and wiser." He turned to the map spread across the table, its edges worn from use. "The Riverlands are our bridge to the south, but they're vulnerable. We must relieve Riverrun and secure the Tullys' loyalty. The Vale remains neutral. Lisa Arryn is your aunt, Catelyn, but she's ruled by fear. We'll send word, but expect little. The Stormlands and Dorne are wild cards. Renly Baratheon and the Martells have no love for Lannisters, but they'll serve their own interests." "What of the Wall?" Maester Luwin asked. "You are bound for it, my lord. The Night's Watch expects you." Ned's jaw tightened. "The Wall will wait. My duty is to my family in the north, but we'll send men and supplies to Castle Black. The wildlings are stirring, and we cannot ignore the threats beyond." The council stretched into the night, plans taking shape. Ned proposed a two-pronged strategy. Robb would lead an army to relieve Riverrun, drawing the Lannisters' attention, while Ned would travel in secret to White Harbor, seeking ships and trade to bolster their resources. The Manderleys were loyal, and their port could open alliances with Bravos or even the Iron Islands, though Ned distrusted the Greyjoys. As the lords dispersed, Catelyn lingered, her hand on Ned's arm. "You've come back to us," she whispered, "but I fear what lies ahead." "Ned Kiss's steeds are ready, father," Robb said, his voice steady but his eyes betraying his youth. "We march at dawn." Ned nodded, his hand resting on ice reclaimed from the Lannister convoy. "We're Starks, Robb. Winter is coming, but we'll face it together." In King's Landing, the court buzzed with whispers of Ned Stark's escape. Cersei paced the Red Keep solar, her goblet of wine untouched. "How did this happen?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "A convoy of 50 men, and Stark slips through their fingers?" Varys stood by the window, his hands folded. "The North is vast, your grace, and Robb Stark is no mere boy. He ambushed our men with precision. We underestimated him." Cersei's eyes flashed. And you, Varys, with your schemes and your whispers, did you not foresee this?" Varys inclined his head. "I serve the realm, your grace. Lord Stark's survival may yet serve us. A living hostage can be bargained with. A dead one only fuels rebellion." Baelish, lounging in a chair, smirked. "The Spider's right, though I'd wager he has his own game afoot. Stark's escape weakens Joffrey's authority. The small folk talk of the Honorable Ned, spared by the gods. It's a dangerous narrative." Cersei's fingers tightened around her goblet. "Then we change the narrative. Spread word that Stark fled like a coward, abandoning his daughters, and tighten the guard on Sansa. Arya's vanished. Find her, or heads will roll." Varys bowed, but his mind was elsewhere. He had ensured Ned's survival, not out of a kindness, but calculation. A living Stark kept the North divided, buying time for other players to move. Across the narrow sea, a Targaryen girl and her dragons were stirring, and Varys played a longer game than Cersei could fathom. Sansa, meanwhile, sat in her chambers, her heart in a tangle of fear and hope. Her father was alive, but she was still a prisoner, her every word watched. She clutched a letter smuggled to her by a servant, a single line in Ned's hand. "Be strong, my daughter. I will come for you." She burned it in the candle flame, her resolve hardening. She would play the dutiful lady, but she would watch and wait. Ned's journey to White Harbor was a shadow's dance, moving through forests and back roads to avoid Lannister scouts. He traveled with a small band, Sir Roderick Cassel, Wyman Manderly's son Wyllis, and a dozen trusted men. The North was alive with whispers of war, and Ned felt the weight of his people's hopes. At White Harbor, Lord Wyman Manderly greeted him with a feast, though Ned's mood was grim. "The North stands with you, Lord Stark," Wyman said, his jowls quivering, "but ships and gold are scarce. The Ironborn raid our coasts, and trade with Braavos is slow." "We'll find a way," Ned replied. "The North must be self-sufficient. If we rely on southern coin, we're at Tywin's mercy." Wyman nodded, his eyes shrewd. "There's a talk of Balon Greyjoy stirring. The Iron Islands could be allies, or vipers. What do you propose?" Ned's jaw tightened. "Send word to Pike. Offer trade, not fealty. Balon's pride won't bend, but his greed might. If he refuses, we fortify our coasts." As they planned, a raven arrived from Riverrun. Robb had broken the siege, scattering Jaime Lannister's forces. The young wolf's victory sent a surge of pride through Ned, but also fear. Robb's boldness would draw Tywin's wrath, and the Lannisters fought with gold as much as steel. That night, Ned stood on White Harbor's walls, the sea wind sharp against his face. He thought of Jon Snow far at the wall, and of secrets he had kept even from Catelyn. If the realm burned, those secrets might be the key to survival, or its doom. The Riverlands were a scarred land, their fields trampled by war, their rivers running red. Robb Stark, the young wolf, stood atop a hill overlooking the Whispering Wood, where his forces had shattered Jaime Lannister's army. The victory had been swift, a testament to Robb's cunning and the ferocity of his bannermen, but it was only the first step in a long war. Jaime, the Kingslayer, was now his prisoner, bound in a tent under a heavy guard. Yet Robb felt no triumph, only the weight of what lay ahead. His mother Catelyn stood beside him, her face etched with pride and worry. "You've done what few could, Robb," she said, her voice steady despite the wind's chill. "The Riverlands breathe easier because of you." Robb's eyes, gray as a winter storm, scanned the horizon. "For now, Tywin Lannister won't sit idle. He'll come for Jaime, and for us. We need more than victories. We need allies." The Tully banners fluttered below, mingled with the dire wolf of Stark. Edmure Tully, Catelyn's brother, had joined Robb's cause, bringing Riverrun strength to the fold. But the Riverlands were a bleeding wound, caught between the Lannisters' wrath and the North's ambitions. Robb knew his father's survival had changed the game. Ned Stark was a beacon to the North, a living symbol of honor that rallied lords and small folk alike. But it also made the Lannisters more dangerous, their pride stung by Ned's escape. "We should send word to Father," Robb said, turning to Catelyn. "He's in White Harbor, rallying the Manderlys. If we coordinate our efforts, we can strike Tywin before he regroups. Catelyn nodded, though her thoughts were with her daughters. Sansa remained a hostage in King's Landing, and Arya, gods only knew where she was. Your father will want to know of Jaime's capture. It's a bargaining chip, but a dangerous one. The Lannisters value their own above all else. Robb's jaw tightened. Then we use Jaime to buy time. I'll send a raven to White Harbor and another to the Vale. If Lysa Arryn joins us, we'll have the strength to march south. Catelyn's expression darkened. Lysa is ruled by fear. She'll hide behind the Ares walls. We must look elsewhere. Renly Baratheon, perhaps, or Dorne. Robb considered this, his mind racing. Renly had declared himself king, backed by the Stormlands and the Reach. The Martells of Dorne, meanwhile, nursed old grudges against the Lannisters. Both were potential allies, but both would demand a price. The North could not bend the knee to another king, not while Joffrey set the Iron Throne and Sansa remained in chains. As they descended the hill, Great Umber approached, his massive frame dwarfing the men around him. "The men are restless, lad," he rumbled. "They want to march to spill more Lannister blood. Give the word, and we'll carve a path to King's Landing." Robb's lips twitched a faint smile. "Patience, my lord. We'll have our fight, but not yet. We consolidate, we plan, and we strike when the time is right." The Gratian grunted, satisfied for now. But Robb knew the North's lords were a fiery lot, their loyalty fierce, but their patience thin. He had to keep them united, to channel their hunger for vengeance into a strategy that would save his sisters and secure the North. That night in Riverrun's great hall, Robb held council with his lords. The air was thick with the scent of wood smoke and ale. Edmure Tully, flushed with the relief of his castle's salvation, called for a bold assault on Harrenhal, where Tywin Lannister had regrouped. Rose Bolton, his pale eyes unreadable, suggested a more cautious approach, harrying Tywin's supply lines to weaken his forces. Catelyn urged diplomacy, proposing envoys to Renly and Dorne. Robb listened, his hands clasped behind his back. At 17, he was younger than most in the room, yet his victories had earned their respect. "We'll do both," he said at last, his voice firm. "Lord Bolton, take a force and raid Tywin's supplies. Keep him off balance. Lord Edmure, fortify the Riverlands crossings. Make it costly for the Lannisters to move. I'll send envoys to Storm's End and Sunspear, but we offer alliance, not submission. The North bows to no southern king." The lords roared their approval, though Bolton's thin smile sent a chill down Robb's spine. There was something about the Lord of the Dreadfort that unsettled him, a coldness that went beyond his soft-spoken demeanor. As the council dispersed, Robb lingered by the map, tracing the lines of the trident. Catelyn joined him, her hand resting on his shoulder. "You're your father's son," she said softly. "But this war will test you in ways you never faced. Be wary, Robb. Trust your heart, but guard it." Robb nodded, his thoughts drifting to Winterfell, to Bran and Rickon, to the father who had returned from the brink of death. "I'll make him proud, mother, and I'll bring Sansa and Arya home." In White Harbor, Eddard Stark stood on the docks, the salt wind tugging at his cloak. The city's port bustled with activity. Ships unloading grain, fishermen hauling their catches, merchants haggling over silks from across the narrow sea. Lord Wyman Manderly, his bulk swathed in velvet, walked beside Ned, gesturing to a fleet of newly built galleys. "These ships will carry our banners, Lord Stark," Wyman said, his voice rich with pride. "With them we can trade with bravos and protect our coasts or even strike at the Lannisters' western shores." Ned nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Well done, Wyman, but ships alone won't win this war. We need men, gold, and allies. What word from Pike?" Wyman's jowls quivered. "Balon Greyjoy sent a reply. He'll meet with you, but he demands terms. The Ironborn don't bend easily, and Balon's pride is sharper than Valyrian steel." Ned's expression hardened. The Greyjoys were a thorny prospect. Balon had rebelled against Robert years ago, losing 2 sons and his fleet in the process. Now, with the realm fracturing, he scented opportunity. Ned distrusted him, but the Iron Islands ships could tip the balance against the Lannisters. "I'll go to Pike," Ned said. "If Balon can be reasoned with, we'll gain a fleet. If not, we'll know where he stands." Wyman hesitated. "It's a risk, my lord. Balon's not known for hospitality, and the journey by sea leaves you exposed." I've faced worse than Balon Greyjoy, Ned replied, his hand resting on Ice's hilt. Send word to Sir Roderick. We sail at dawn. The voyage to Pike was a grim affair, the Iron Sea's waves battering the ship. Ned stood at the prow, his thoughts a tangle of duty and doubt. He had received Robb's raven about Jaime's capture, a bold move, but one that would provoke Tywin's wrath. Ned's heart swelled with pride for his son, but fear gnawed at him. Robb was a leader, but still a boy, and war was a merciless teacher. At Pike, the Iron Islands' jagged cliffs loomed like the teeth of some ancient beast. Balon Greyjoy awaited in his damp, smoky hall, his lean frame draped in black. His daughter Yara stood at his side, her eyes sharp and defiant. Theon, Ned's former ward, was there too, his face a mask of conflicting loyalties. Eddard Stark, Balon said, his voice like the scrape of iron. You come to my hall, a man spared by Lannister mercy, and ask for my ships. Why should I aid a wolf who's lost his fangs? Ned met Balon's gaze unflinching. I ask for no aid, only a bargain. The Lannisters choke the realm. Join us, and you'll have trode, gold, and a chance to strike at your enemies. Refuse, and the North will guard its coasts against your raids. Balon's lips curled. You threaten me in my own hall. I speak truth, Ned said. The Ironborn thrive on strength. Show it now, and we'll stand together, or hide behind your rocks, and the Lannisters will crush us all in time. Yara's eyes gleamed with interest, but Balon's face remained stone. Theon shifted uncomfortably, his gaze darting between Ned and his father. Finally, Balon leaned forward. I'll give you ships, Stark, but not for your honor or your gold. I want the North's western shores, Moatkillin to Bear Island, under Ironborn rule. Ned's blood ran cold. You ask for my lands, my people. That's no bargain. It's theft. Call it what you will, Balon said. That's my price. Ned's hand tightened on Ice's pommel, but he forced himself to stay calm. I'll consider your terms, but know this. The North forgets no slight. If we deal, it's as equals, not vassals. Balon smirked, dismissing him. As Ned left the hall, Theon followed, his voice low. Lord Stark, I want to help. My father's stubborn, but I know the North. Let me prove my worth. Ned studied Theon, seeing the boy he'd raised alongside his sons. Your place is here, Theon. But if you wish to aid us, be our voice with your father. Convince him to fight for the realm, not just his pride. Theon nodded, though doubt lingered in his eyes. Ned boarded his ship, his mind heavy. Balon's price was too high, but war demanded compromises. He would find another way. In King's Landing, the Red Keep was a nest of intrigue. Cersei Lannister sat in her solar, her fingers drumming on the table. Jaime's capture had shaken her, a crack in the Lannister armor. Tywin was marshalling his forces at Harrenhal, but the North's rebellion grew bolder by the day. Ned Stark's survival had galvanized his bannermen, and Robb's victories were a thorn in her side. Varys entered, his silken robes whispering against the stone floor. Your Grace, he said, bowing. I bring tidings from the North. Robb Stark has taken Jaime prisoner, and Eddard Stark seeks allies in White Harbor. Cersei's eyes flashed. And you let this happen, Varys? Your whispers failed us. Varys spread his hands. I serve the realm, your Grace. Stark's survival was a calculated risk. A dead lord would have united the North against us irrevocably. A living one can be bargained with. Or broken. Cersei's lip curled. Then break him. Find a way to turn his allies, sow discord among his lords, and find Arya Stark. Her disappearance is a loose thread. Varys inclined his head. As you command. But permit me to suggest a bolder move. Send an envoy to Riverrun, offering terms. Jaime's freedom for Sansa's continued safety. It will test Robb Stark's resolve. Cersei considered this, her mind racing. Do it! But ensure the envoy is expendable. I trust neither Stark nor Tully. As Varys departed, Peter Baelish slipped into the room, his smirk ever present. Trouble, your Grace! The young wolf snaps at our heels, and the spider spins his webs. Cersei glared at him. Speak plainly, Littlefinger. What do you want? Only to serve, Baelish said, his tone mocking. But if I may, the North is not your only threat. Renly Baratheon gathers strength in the Stormlands, and Stannis broods on Dragonstone. Divide your enemies, or they'll unite against you." Cersei's fingers tightened around her goblet. "And how do you propose I do that?" Baelish leaned closer, his voice a whisper. "Offer Renly a marriage alliance. Sansa for his loyalty. It's a lie, of course, but it buys time. Meanwhile, I'll sow seeds of doubt among Robb's lords. The North is fierce, but not unbreakable." Cersei's eyes narrowed, but she nodded. "See it done. But if you betray me, Littlefinger, your head will adorn the spikes beside Ned Stark's." Baelish bowed, his smile never wavering. As he left, he thought of Sansa, a pawn in his game. The girl was learning to play the court's deadly dance, but she was still a Stark. Trusting, vulnerable. He would use that. Sansa, meanwhile, sat in her chambers stitching a dire wolf onto a scrap of cloth. The letter from her father burned in her memory, a spark of hope in her gilded cage. She had learned to smile for Joffrey, to flatter Cersei, but her heart was with her family. A knock at the door startled her. A servant slipping her another note. "Stay sharp, little wolf. Eyes are everywhere." A friend. Sansa burned the note, her resolve hardening. She would be the lady Cersei expected, but she would watch and wait. Far to the north, Jon Snow stood atop the wall, the wind howling like a direwolf. Castle Black was a world apart from the wars of the south, yet the tidings of his father's survival had reached even here. Ned was alive, Robb was fighting, and the north was rising. Jon's heart ached to join them, but his vows bound him to the Night's Watch. Lord Commander Jorah Mormont summoned him to his chambers, his face grim. "Jon, we've had ravens from White Harbor. Your father sends men and supplies, but he's not coming to take the Black. He's fighting a war." Jon's throat tightened. "He's doing what he must, Lord Commander. For the North, for my sisters." Mormont nodded, his eyes weary. "Aye, but the Wall needs men, now more than ever. The wildlings are massing beyond the Frostfangs, and rangers report strange things. Shadows in the snow, fires in the night. The old tales may be waking." Jon thought of the Whites he'd seen, the blue-eyed horrors that haunted his dreams. "I'll do my duty, sir. But if my father calls, Mormont raised a hand. "Your father's fight is yours in time. For now, ready the men. We're sending a ranging beyond the wall to find Mance Rayder and learn what stirs in the dark." Jon nodded, his thoughts a storm. As he left, Samwell Tarly caught up with him, his round face anxious. "Jon, there's talk among the brothers. Some say Ned's survival means the Starks will win, that you'll leave to join them." Jon's jaw clenched. "I swore an oath, Sam. I won't break it." But as he gazed north, where the world was ice and shadow, Jon felt a pull, toward his family, toward the secrets Ned had kept. The wall was his duty, but the Starks were his blood. Back in White Harbor, Ned received Robb's raven about Jaime's capture. He sat in Lord Wyman's solar, the news both a triumph and a burden. Jaime was a prize, but holding him would draw Tywin's full might. Ned penned a reply, urging Robb to fortify the Riverlands and seek allies, but to avoid rash moves. "Your sisters' lives hang in the balance," he wrote. "Act with courage, but with care." As he sealed the letter, Sir Roderick entered, his face grim. "My lord, a ship's arrived from Braavos, a merchant, but he carries a message from Varys." Ned's blood ran cold. He took the parchment, its words brief. "The lion roars, but the dragon stirs. Trust your honor, but guard your back." A spider's thread. Varys again. The spider's game was opaque, but his warnings had saved Ned once. He burned the note, his mind racing. The dragon could only mean Daenerys Targaryen, rumored to be gathering strength across the sea. If she returned with dragons, the realm's wars would pale in comparison. Ned turned to Sir Roderick. "We sail from Moat Cailleen. I'll join Robb in the Riverlands. The North must stand united, or we'll fall." As he prepared to depart, Ned stood on White Harbor's walls, the sea stretching before him. The North was his heart, his family its lifeblood. He had survived King's Landing, but the true test lay ahead. Tywin Lannister, Balon Greyjoy, Varys' schemes, and whispers of dragons all loomed like storm clouds. But Ned was a Stark, and Starks endured. Winter was coming, and he would face it with ice in hand. The Riverlands churned with the chaos of its war. their fields scarred by hoof prints and their skies heavy with smoke. Robb Stark and the young wolf stood in Riverrun's war room, his eyes fixed on a map of the Seven Kingdoms. The Tully banners hung alongside the direwolf of Stark, a symbol of their fragile alliance. Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer, remained a prisoner in the castle's cells, his presence a constant reminder of the stakes. Robb's victory at the Whispering Wood had bolstered his reputation, but Tywin Lannister's forces at Harrenhal loomed like a storm on the horizon. Catelyn Tully Stark paced beside her son, her face a mask of resolve. "Your father's raven arrived this morning," she said, handing Robb a sealed parchment. "He's left White Harbor for Moat Cailin. He urges you to hold the Riverlands and seek allies, but to beware Tywin's wrath." Robbie Mob broke the seal, his father's familiar script steadying his heart. "Your victories honor the North, Robb, but war is a long road. Jaime's capture is a blade with two edges. Use it wisely. Fortify the Riverlands, but do not overextend. I come to join you. Eddard Stark." He folded the letter, his jaw tight. Father's right. Tywin will come for Jaime, and he'll bring an army. We need to strengthen our position before he strikes. Edmure Tully, Lord of Riverrun, leaned over the map, his enthusiasm undimmed by the siege's end. "Weave the rivers to our advantage. Fortify the fords, set traps, and Tywin's men will drown before they reach us." Roose Bolton, seated in the shadows, spoke in his soft, chilling voice. "Defenses are wise, but we must bleed the Lannisters. My men have raided their supply lines, but Harrenhal is a fortress. We should draw Tywin out, force him to fight on our terms." Robb considered this, his mind racing. Bolton's counsel was sound, but his cold demeanor unsettled him. The Lord of the Dreadfort was loyal for now, but his ambition was a shadow Robb could not ignore. "We'll do both," he decided. "Lord Edmure, fortify the fords. Lord Bolton, continue your raids, but avoid open battle. We weaken Tywin while we wait for father." Catelyn's eyes flickered with concern. "And the envoys? Have we word from Renly or Dorne?" Robb shook his head. "Renly's silent, likely weighing his own claim to the throne. The Martells sent a vague reply, promising to consider our offer. They hate the Lannisters, but they'll move only when it suits them." Great John Umber slammed a fist on the table, his voice a bellow. "To hell with Southern games! Let's march on Harrenhal, free Sansa, and gut Joffrey like a fish!" The room erupted in cheers, but Robb raised a hand, silencing them. "We want Sansa free, Lord Umber, but storming King's Landing now would cost us everything. We fight smart, or we lose her forever." As the lords dispersed, Catelyn lingered, her hand on Robb's arm. "You're carrying a heavy burden, my son. Your father will be here soon, but until then trust your instincts, and beware those who seek to use you." Robb nodded, his thoughts drifting to Winterfell, to Bran and Rickon, to the sisters trapped dead in the south. "I'll keep us whole, Mother, for all of us." That night a Lannister envoy arrived under a flag of truce, escorted by Tully men. The man, a minor knight named Sir Amory Lorch, bore a letter from Cersei. Robb read it aloud to his council. "Return Sir Jaime Lannister unharmed, and Lady Sansa will be treated with mercy. Defy us, and her fate will be on your heads. Cersei Lannister, Queen Regent." The room bristled with anger, but Robb kept his composure. "It's a hollow promise," he said. "Cersei won't release Sansa. She's too valuable, but this shows they're desperate." Catelyn's voice was steel. "We send Sir Amory back with a message. Jaime remains our prisoner until Sansa is freed. No negotiation." Robb agreed, dispatching the envoy with a stern reply. But as the night rode away, Robb felt a chill. The Lannisters were not done playing their games, and Sansa's safety hung by a thread. Eddard Stark rode through the neck, the swamps and bogs a treacherous maze. His small band, Sir Roderick Cassell, Waelys Manderly, and a dozen Northmen, moved with caution, wary of Lannister scouts or rogue bands. The Crannamen, loyal to House Reed, guided them through hidden paths, their silent presence a comfort in the eerie landscape. Howland Reed himself had met Ned at Greywater Watch, his small frame belying a fierce loyalty. "You've stirred the realm, Ned," Howland said, his voice soft as the marsh's whispers. "The North rallies to you, but the South is a viper's nest. What's your plan?" Ned's eyes were fixed on the horizon, where Moat Cailin's ancient towers loomed. "Rejoin, Robb. Unite our forces and free my daughters. Tywin Lannister won't rest, and Joffrey's cruelty grows bolder. We need to strike before they crush us." Howland nodded, his gaze distant. There's more at play than Lannisters. Ravens from the walls speak of a whittling host and worse. The old tales stir, Ned. You know this. Ned's hand tightened on Ice's hilt. He thought of Jon Snow, bound by vows at Castle Black, and of secrets he had guarded for years. The wall's threats are real, but I can't fight shadows while my family bleeds. We deal with the south first, then turn north. At Moat Cailin, the Stark banners flew high, a sight that warmed Ned's heart. The fortress, though crumbling, was a choke point no army could bypass. Lord Galbar Glover greeted him, his face weathered but resolute. The north holds, Lord Stark. Robb's victories have lit a fire in our men. Ned clasped Glover's arm. Good. We'll need that fire. What word from Riverrun? Robb's fortified the fords and sent raiders to harass Tywin, Glover replied. Jaime Lannister's capture has the south in an uproar, but there's talk of Renly Baratheon marching north and Stannis gathering ships on Dragonstone. Ned's jaw tightened. The Baratheon brothers were wild cards, their ambitions a threat as great as Tywin's armies. We'll send envoys to both, but expect little. Our strength lies in the north and the Riverlands. Prepare the men. We ride for Riverrun at dawn. That night Ned stood atop Moat Cailin's walls, the wind carrying the scent of peat and salt. A raven from White Harbor had brought troubling news. Balon Greyjoy was massing ships, his intentions unclear. Ned's meeting at Pike had yielded no alliance, and Balin's demand for northern lands was a wound to his pride. If the Ironborn struck, the north's coasts would bleed. A soft footfall broke his thoughts. Howland Reed joined him, his eyes glinting in the torchlight. You're troubled, Ned. Speak it. Ned hesitated, then voiced the fear that gnawed at him. I survived King's Landing, Howland, but at what cost? Robb's fighting my war, Sansa's a hostage, and Arya's lost. I wonder if my honors led us to ruin. Howland's gaze was steady. Your honor's why the North follows you. It's why I'm here. You kept faith with me at the Tower of Joy. Keep it now, and you'll see this through. Ned nodded, the memory of that blood-soaked day a weight he carried always. I'll fight for my family, Howland, whatever it takes. In King's Landing, the Red Keep was a cauldron of deceit. Cersei Lannister sat on the Iron Throne in Joffrey's absence, her golden hair gleaming under the torchlight. The Boy King was hunting, his cruelty sated for now, but his absence gave Cersei room to maneuver. Jaime's capture had shaken her, a crack in her carefully built world. Tywin's letters from Harrenhal were terse, demanding action, but Cersei knew her father's patience was thinning. Varys entered the throne room, his silken robes a whisper against the stone. Your Grace, word from Riverrun. Robb Stark rejects our terms. Jaime remains a prisoner, and Eddard Stark has reached Moat Cailin. Cersei's fingers dug into the throne's arms, the blades biting her skin. Then we make them pay. Send word to Tywin, crush the Riverlands, and tighten the guard on Sansa. If the Starks defy us, she'll suffer. Varys bowed, his expression unreadable. As you command. But permit me to note that Sansa's value lies in her life. Harm her, and the North will fight to the last man. Cersei's eyes flashed. Do not lecture me, Spider. Find Arya Stark, or your head will join the others on the spikes. As Varys departed, Pater Baelish slipped into the room, his smirk a constant thorn. Trouble, your Grace. The Starks are proving stubborn, and Tywin's armies bleed in the Riverlands. Cersei glared at him. Speak your mind, Littlefinger, or hold your tongue. Baelish's eyes gleamed. I propose a subtler weapon. The North's lords are loyal, but loyalty can be bought or broken. I've contacts in the Riverlands, men who will sow discord among Robb's bannermen at any moment. A few whispers, a few coins, and the young wolf's army phrase. Cersei considered this, her mind a storm of rage and calculation. Do it! But if you fail, Baelish, I'll feed you to Joffrey's hounds. Baelish bowed, his smile unshaken. As he left, he thought of Sansa, a pawn he intended to mold. The girl was learning the court's games, but her trust was a weakness he could exploit. Sansa, in her chambers, sat by a window, her needlework forgotten. Joffrey's cruelty had grown erratic, his taunts sharper since news of Jaime's capture. She played the dutiful lady, but her heart was with her family. A servant, one of Varys's little birds, had slipped her another note. The wolf endures. Be ready. A friend. She burned it, her pulse quickening. Someone was watching, aiding her, but she dared not hope too fiercely. That night she overheard a conversation between two guards outside her door. "The girl's sister's gone to ground," one muttered. "They say she's in the city, hiding like a rat." Sansa's breath caught. Arya was alive in King's Landing. The knowledge was a spark, igniting her resolve. She would endure for her sister, for her father, for the North. Arya Stark moved through King's Landing's alleys like a ghost, her small frame cloaked in rags. Since Ned's near execution, she had evaded capture, living among the city's underbelly. Yoren, the Night's Watch recruiter, had helped her escape the Red Keep, but he'd been called north, leaving her to fend for herself. She called herself Aerie now, a street rat with a stolen knife and a heart full of vengeance. The city was a maze of danger. Gold cloaks patrolled the streets, and Lannister spies lurked in every tavern. Arya survived by wit and speed, stealing bread from markets and sleeping in abandoned cellars. She heard whispers of her father's survival, of Robb's victories, and her hope flickered like a candle in the wind. One night in Flea Bottom, she overheard a group of sellswords talking. "The Stark girl's worth a fortune," one said. His voice slurred with ale. "Cersei wants her alive, but the spider's got his own plans." Arya's grip tightened on her knife. Varys. The name was a shadow, a threat she didn't understand. She slipped away, her mind racing. She needed to find a way out of the city, to reach Robb or her father. But the gates were watched, and she was alone. As she crept through an alley, a hand grabbed her arm. She spun, knife raised, but froze at the sight of a familiar face. Gendry, the armorer's apprentice she'd met on the road with Yoren. His dark eyes were wary but kind. "Easy, Aerie," he said, releasing her. "You're not the only one hiding. The Lannisters want me, too. Something about my blood." Arya lowered her knife, her heart pounding. "Why are you here?" "Same as you, surviving," Gendry said. "But I heard talk. There's a smuggler at the docks, Davos Seaworth. He's loyal to Stannis Baratheon, not the Lannisters. He might get us out." Arya's eyes narrowed. She didn't trust Stannis, but escape was her only chance. "Take me to him." Gendry nodded, and they vanished into the night, two shadows against a city of snakes. At Castle Black, Jon Snow prepared for the ranging beyond the wall. The Night's Watch was stretched thin, its men weary from wilding raids and whispers of darker threats. Lord Commander Jorah Mormont had chosen Jon to lead a small party to scout Mance Raiders' movements, a task that weighed heavily on him. Samwell Tarly, bundled in furs, approached as Jon checked his gear. "Jon, there's a raven from Winterfell. Bran says he's had dreams. Green dreams, like Jojen Reed's. He sees a great darkness coming." Jon's heart clenched. Bran's dreams were no mere fancies. The boy had a gift, though Jon didn't fully understand it. "What kind of darkness?" Sam hesitated. "He didn't say, but he's scared. And there's more. Maester Luwin says the wildlings are moving south in numbers we've never seen." Jon's thoughts raced. His father's survival, Robb's war, and now Bran's warnings. Everything pointed to a storm greater than the Lannisters. "We'll find answers beyond the wall," he said, though doubt gnawed at him. "Tell Luwin to keep Bran safe." As Jon led his party into the snow, Ghost at his side, he felt the weight of his vows. The Night's Watch was his duty, but his family was his heart. If the old tales were true, the wall might face threats no army could withstand. Ned reached Riverrun under a sky heavy with rain, the Tully banners a welcome sight. Robb met him at the gates, his face a mix of relief and weariness. Father and son embraced, the weight of their shared burden unspoken but felt. "You've done well, Robb," Ned said, his voice rough with emotion. "The North is proud." Robb's eyes were older than his years. "I'm trying, Father, but the Lannisters won't stop, and Sansa's still their prisoner. We need a plan." Inside Riverrun's hall, Ned greeted Catelyn, her embrace a balm to his soul. The council that followed was tense, the lords eager for action. Ned outlined his strategy. Hold the Riverlands, expand their alliances, and use Jaime as leverage to free Sansa. But he warned of new threats, Balon Greyjoy's ambitions and whispers of dragons across the sea. "Renly and Stannis are our best hope for allies," Ned said. "I'll send envoys to both, offering friendship, not fealty. The North stands for itself." Rose Bolton's pale eyes flickered. "And if they demand we bend the knee?" Ned's gaze was steel. "We don't kneel to southern kings. Our fight is for family, for justice." As the council ended, Ned and Robb stood alone by the map. "You've grown into a leader," Ned said, "but this war will test us both. Stay sharp, Robb. The Lannisters play a deeper game." Robb nodded, his hand on his sword. "We'll face it together, father." Outside, the rain fell, a reminder of the storm to come. Ned thought of Arya, lost in the south, and of Jon, facing dangers while on the wall. The Starks were scattered, but their blood was strong. He would fight to bring them home, whatever the cost. Riverrun's stone walls stood resolute against the autumn rains, a bastion of Stark and Tully defiance. Inside, the great hall buzzed with the voices of lords and captains, their plans sharpened by the news of Eddard Stark's return. And Ned sat at the high table, his presence a rallying cry for the North, while Robb stood beside him, the young wolf tempered by war. Catelyn, ever the voice of caution, watched the council with a mother's fear and a strategist's eye. Jaime Lannister remained a prisoner below, his fate a spark that could ignite the realm. The map before them was a tapestry of conflict. Tywin Lannister's forces at Harrenhal, Renly Baratheon's growing army in the Stormlands, Stannis brooding on Dragonstone, and whispers of Balon Greyjoy's ships massing in the Iron Islands. Ned's survival had galvanized the North, but it had also drawn the Lannisters' wrath, their armies poised to crush the Riverlands. "We've fortified to the fords," Edmure Tully reported, his voice brimming with confidence. "Tywin's men will bleed if they try to cross. The Riverlands are ours." Rose Bolton's soft voice cut through the room like a blade. "Defenses hold only so long, Lord Tully. My raids have weakened Tywin's supplies, but he's mustering reinforcements from Casterly Rock. We must strike before he overwhelms us." Ned's gray eyes studied the map, his mind weighing each word. "Lord Bolton's right. Tywin won't wait, but we can't abandon the Riverlands to march on Harrenhal. Our strength lies in unity. Robb, what say you?" Robb's jaw tightened, his youth belied by the steel in his voice. "We hold the fords, harass Tywin's lines, and send envoys to Renly and Stannis. If either joins us, we can flank Tywin and break his hold on the south. But we keep Jaime as leverage. Sansa's life depends on it." Greatjon Umber slammed a fist on the table, his beard bristling. "Enough talk of envoys! Let's gut the Lannisters and free Lady Sansa with steel!" The hall roared, but Ned raised a hand, silencing them. "Courage alone won't save my daughter, Lord Umber. Tywin fights with gold and treachery as much as swords. We need allies, and we need time." Catelyn's voice was firm. "Renly's army is vast, but he's untested. Stannis is rigid, but his claim is stronger. We must tread carefully. Neither will aid us without a price." Ned nodded, his thoughts drifting to Sansa, trapped in King's Landing, and Arya, lost in the city's shadows. "We sent Ser Roderick Cassel to Storm's End, and Lord Wireless Manderley to Dragonstone. Offer alliance, not fealty. The North bows to no king." As the council dispersed, Robb lingered with Ned, his eyes heavy with responsibility. "Father, Cersei's envoy offered Sansa's safety for Jaime's release. I refused, but what if I was wrong?" Ned placed a hand on Robb's shoulder. "You did right, Robb. Cersei's promises are empty. We'll free Sansa, but not by trusting Lannisters. Stay sharp and keep the lords united." Robb nodded, his resolve hardening. "We'll hold, father, for Sansa, for Arya, for the North." That night, a raven arrived from Moat Cailin. Balon Greyjoy had declared himself king of the Iron Islands, his ships raiding the northwestern coasts. Ned's heart sank. His negotiations at Pike had failed, and Balon's betrayal was a new wound. The Ironborn were a threat and the North could ill afford, but Ned had no choice but to focus on the Lannisters for now. In King's Landing, Arya Stark moved through the city's underbelly like a shadow, her small frame cloaked in stolen rags. Calling herself airy, she survived on wit and instinct, her stolen knife a constant companion. The news of her father's survival and Robb's victories had reached the streets, fueling her hope, but sharpening her caution. The gold cloaks hunted her, and Varys' spies were everywhere, their motives as murky as the Blackwater. Arya had allied with Gendry, the armorer's apprentice with a secret of his own, Robert Baratheon's bastard blood. Together they sought Davos Seaworth, a smuggler loyal to Stannis Baratheon, rumored to be docked at the city's wharves. Escape was their only chance, but King's Landing was a trap, its gates watched and its alleys crawling with danger. They found Davos in a tavern by the docks, his weathered face marked by years at sea. His eyes narrowed as Arya and Gendry approached, their ragged appearance belying their purpose. "You're the Stark girl," he said, his voice low. "And you, Baratheon's Ged, I'd wager. Why should I risk my neck for you?" Arya's gaze was fierce. "Because we're fighting the same enemy. The Lannisters want us dead. Help us and we'll help Stannis." Davos studied her, his fingers tracing the stump of his shortened fingers, a reminder of Stannis' justice. "I'm no friend to Lannisters, but Stannis plays a hard game. If I smuggle you out, you'll owe him. Are you ready for that?" Arya nodded, though her heart rebelled at owing anyone. "Get us to Dragonstone, and I'll deal with Stannis." Gendry shifted, his voice wary. "What's the plan? The docks are crawling with guards." Davos's lips twitched. "I've run blockades before. There's a skiff hidden in the Mudgate's shadow. Meet me at midnight and keep your heads down." As they slipped back into the alleys, Arya's mind raced. She trusted Davos little more than she trusted the Lannisters, but he was her path out. She thought of her father, of Robb, of the direwolf pendant she'd lost in the chaos of her escape. She was a Stark, and she would survive. But fate was cruel. As they neared the Mudgate, a patrol of gold cloaks appeared, their torches casting long shadows. Arya and Gendry ducked into a doorway, but a shout rang out. A street urchin, one of Varys' little birds, had spotted them. "It's her! The Stark girl!" Arya's knife flashed, but Gendry grabbed her arm. "Run!" They sprinted through the alleys, the gold cloak's boots pounding behind. Arya's heart hammered, her legs burning as she dodged cratons and barrels. Gendry pulled her into a sewer grate, the stench overwhelming but the darkness a shield. They crouched, breathless, as the guards' voices faded. "We can't stay here," Gendry whispered. "They'll search the docks." Arya's eyes blazed. "We make it to Davos or we're dead. Come on!" They emerged near the Mudgate, the skiff's outline barely visible in the moonlight. Davos waited, his face grim. "You've got half the city after you. Get in now." As the skiff slipped into the Blackwater, Arya clung to the edge, her gaze fixed on King's Landing's receding lights. She was leaving Sansa behind, a wound that cut deeper than any blade. But she was free, and she would find her family. In Harrenhal, Tywin Lannister sat in the castle's cavernous hall, his golden eyes cold as steel. The news of Jaime's capture and Ned Stark's survival had shaken his plans, but Tywin was no man to falter. His armies were regrouping, bolstered by levies from Casterly Rock, and his spies brought daily reports of the Starks' movements. Sir Kevan Lannister, his brother, stood before him, his face grim. Robb Stark's fortified the Riverlands fords, and his raiders bleed our supplies. Ned Stark has joined him at Riverrun, rallying the North. We must act, or the rebellion grows. Tywin's fingers steepled, his voice measured. The Starks are bold, but overextended. Their allies are few, and the North is vast, hard to defend. Balon Greyjoy's raids will stretch them thin. Kevan frowned. Greyjoy's no ally. He'll strike us as readily as the Starks. Precisely, Tywin said. Let him weaken the North. We focus on the Riverlands. Send Gregor Clegane to burn their villages, sow fear, break their will. Meanwhile, I'll negotiate with Renly Baratheon. His army could tip the scales. Kevan hesitated. And Jaime? Tywin's expression hardened. Jaime's a pawn, but a valuable one. Cersei's envoy failed, so we changed tactics. Offer Robb Stark a truce. Jaime for peace. He'll refuse, but it buys time to crush his allies. As Kevan departed, Tywin summoned his spy master, a weasel-faced man named Vylar. Find Arya Stark, Tywin ordered. Cersei's lost her, but she's in King's Landing. Her capture will break Ned Stark's resolve. Vylar bowed, his eyes gleaming with greed. It will be done, my lord. In King's Landing, Cersei paced her solar, her temper fraying. Arya's escape, confirmed by reports of a skirmish at the docks, had humiliated her, and Sansa's quiet defiance was a growing irritation. Joffrey's cruelty only worsened matters, his tantrums alienating the court. Varys entered, his silken robes a whisper. Your Grace, Arya Stark has fled the city, likely by sea. My bird suggests she's bound for Dragonstone. Cersei's goblet crashed to the floor. Dragonstone? Stannis? You've failed me, Spider. Varys' expression remained serene. I serve the realm, your grace. Arya's flight weakens your hold, but it strengthens Stannis. A divided south benefits no one. Perhaps a truce with the Starks? Cersei's eyes narrowed. Never. They'll pay for Jaime's chains. Double the guard on Sansa and find a way to turn Robb's lords. I want the North broken. Varys bowed, but his mind was elsewhere. Arya's escape was his doing, a subtle push to destabilize the Lannisters. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen's dragons grew, and Varys played for a future Cersei could not see. Sansa in her chambers stitched a direwolf onto a handkerchief, her hand steady, despite her fear. Joffrey's taunts had grown vicious, but she clung to the notes from her mysterious ally. The wolf runs free. Endure. A friend. She burned the latest, her heart racing. Arya was alive, perhaps free. Sansa would play her part, a lady in a viper's nest until her family came for her. On Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon stood in his war room, his jaw clenched as he studied a map of Westeros. The painted table, carved in the shape of the Seven Kingdoms, was littered with markers. Lannisters in the west, Starks in the north, Renly in the south. Stannis' claim to the Iron Throne was ironclad, but his forces were few, his allies fewer. Davos Seaworth entered, his weathered face tense. My lord, I've brought 2 fugitives from King's Landing, a girl, Arya Stark, and a boy, Gendry, one of Robert's bastards. Stannis' eyes narrowed. Stark's daughter? Why bring her here? Davos' voice was steady. She's a weapon, my lord. The Starks fight the Lannisters, same as you. Her name could rally the North to your cause. Melisandre, the Red Priestess, glided forward, her eyes burning. The girl is touched by fate, my lord. I see her in the flames, a wolf in the storm. Keep her close, and the Lord of Light will guide us. Stannis' lip curled. I trust steel, not flames, but the Stark girl could be useful. Bring her. Arya was ushered in, her ragged clothes a stark contrast to the chamber's grim opulence. Her eyes met Stannis' unflinching. I'm not your pawn, she said, her voice sharp. I want to fight the Lannisters, not serve another king. Stannis' gaze was cold. You're a child, and you're here by my sufferance. Aid me, and I'll aid your family. Defy me, and you'll find Dragonstone a harsh refuge. Arya's fists clenched, but she nodded. She had no love for Stannis, but his ships could take her to Robb or her father. For now, she would bide her time. Gendry, standing beside her, shifted uncomfortably. What about me, my lord? I'm no Stark. Stannis' eyes flicked to him. You're Robert's blood, boy. That makes you a threat or an asset. Stay loyal and you'll have a place. As Arya and Gendry were dismissed, Melisandre's voice followed them. The night is dark and full of terrors, child, but the fire burns bright. Arya shivered, her thoughts on her family. She was closer to freedom, but Dragonstone was no haven. Beyond the wall, Jon Snow led his ranging through a world of ice and shadow. Ghost padded beside him, the direwolf's white fur blending with the snow. The wildlings were massing. Mance Raiders host a growing threat, but the Rangers' report spoke of worse. Whites in the night, blue-eyed horrors that defied death. Samwell Tarly, huffing in the cold, clutched a dragon-glass dagger. Jon, the old tales say the others fear obsidian. If they're real... They're real, Jon said, his voice grim. He'd seen a white, fought it at Castle Black. The memory haunted him, a reminder of threats beyond the Lannisters' wars. Their scout, Corran Halfhand, returned from a ridge, his face carved with worry. Mance's camp is near, but there's something else. Tracks, not human. We're being watched. Jon's hand rested on Longclaw's hilt. We find Mance, learn his plans. If the others are stirring, we need the wildlings as allies, not enemies. Corran's eyes were hard. You're Ned Stark's son, Jon. Honor's in your blood, but out here survival matters more. Be ready to do what's needed. Jon nodded, though his heart rebelled. His father's survival, Robb's war, Bran's dreams, all pulled at him, but the wall was his duty. As they pressed deeper into the wild, Ghost's growl warned of danger. The night was coming, and Jon feared what it would bring. At Riverrun, Ned and Robb stood in the war room, the weight of their reunion tempered by the war's demands. The Ironborn raids on the North's coast were a growing threat, and Tywin's armies were massing for a strike. Ned's envoys to Renly and Stannis had yet to return, and the Martells remained silent. A raven from Dragonstone arrived, its message a shock. Arya Stark is safe on Dragonstone, under Stannis Baratheon's protection. He offers alliance, but demands the North's support for his claim. Davos Seaworth. Ned's heart leaped. Arya was alive, free from the Lannisters. But Stannis' demand was a chain he could not accept. "We'll send word to Stannis," he said to Robb. "Arya's safety is paramount, but the North kneels to no king." Robb's eyes gleamed with relief, but his voice was cautious. "Stannis could be a strong ally, but his rigidity worries me. Renly's army is larger, but he's untested. Who do we trust?" "Neither," Ned said. "We use them as they'll use us. Send a party to Dragonstone to retrieve Arya, but make no promises. We focus on Tywin. He's the immediate threat." As they planned, Catelyn entered, her face pale. A Lannister host approaches the fords, led by Gregor Clegane. They're burning villages, slaughtering small folk. Ned's blood ran cold. The mountain was Tywin's blunt instrument, a terror meant to break their resolve. "Robb, take a force and meet him. Don't engage directly. Harass, ambush, wear him down. I'll rally their reserves and prepare Riverrun for siege." Robb nodded, his face set. "We'll stop him, father. For the Riverlands, for Sansa." As Robb rode out, Ned stood on Riverrun's battlements, ice at his side. The North was his heart, his family its lifeblood. Arya was safe, but Sansa remained in chains, and the realm was fracturing. Tywin's armies, Balon's ships, Stannis' demands, and whispers of dragons all loomed like shadows. But Ned was a Stark, and Starks endured. Winter was coming, and he would face it with fire in his veins. The Riverlands burned under a sky choked with ash. Gregor Clegane, the mountain that rides, led a Lannister host through the countryside, his men torching villages and slaughtering small folk. The fords of the Trident, fortified by Edmure Tully's forces, stood as the last line of defense against his advance. Robb Stark, the young wolf, rode at the head of a swift-moving cavalry, his direwolf Grey Wind loping beside him. The Stark and Tully banners snapped in the wind, a defiant challenge to the Lannister lion. Robb's scouts had tracked Clegane's movements, their reports grim. The mountain's host was smaller than Tywin's main army, but brutal, designed to sow terror and break the Riverlands' will. Robb's plan was simple. Avoid a pitched battle, harass Clegane's flanks, and draw him into a trap where the river's currents and Tully archers could do their work. Great John Umber, riding at Robb's side, grinned through his beard. "Let's carve that monster's head off, lad. The mountain's big, but he bleeds like any man." Robb's eyes were steel. "We don't face him head-on, Lord Umber. He's Tywin's hammer. We'll be the anvil. Hit and run, bleed them dry." The first skirmish came at dawn, as Clegane's outriders crossed a shallow ford. Robb's archers, hidden in the reeds, loosed a volley that felled a dozen men. Grey Wind's howl echoed, sending horses into a panic. Robb led a cavalry charge, striking fast and retreating before Clegane's main force could respond. The mountain roared orders, his massive frame towering over his men, but the Starks were gone, melting into the mist. For days, Robb's forces harried Clegane, striking at supply wagons, ambushing stragglers, and luring his men into bogs where Tully's spearmen waited. The mountain's rage grew, his discipline fraying as his losses mounted. Robb, though weary, felt a grim satisfaction. Every blow weakened Tywin's grip on the Riverlands. But Clegane was no fool. On the 5th day, he baited a trap of his own, feigning a retreat to draw Robb's forces into a narrow valley. Robb, sensing the danger, pulled back, but not before a brutal clash cost him 20 men. As he regrouped, a scout brought dire news. Clegane was marching on a nearby village, one loyal to House Tully, to make an example of its people. "We can't let him slaughter them," Robb said, his voice tight. "We ride now, hit him before he reaches the village." Catelyn, who had joined the camp to coordinate with Riverrun, gripped his arm. "Robb, it's a trap. Clegane wants you to commit. If you fall, the North falters." Robb's jaw clenched. "I won't let innocents die to save my own skin, Mother. We'll be careful, but we ride." The battle of the village was chaos. Robb's cavalry struck Clegane's rear, scattering his raiders, but the mountain himself led a countercharge, his warhammer crushing men with every swing. Grey Wind tore through the Lannister ranks, but Clegane's sheer size and savagery held the line. Robb, wielding his sword with deadly precision, cut down a knight and rallied his men, but the cost was high. As dusk fell, Robb withdrew, his forces bloodied but intact. Clegane's host was battered, forced to retreat from the village, but the victory was bittersweet. Robb had saved the small folk, but his losses were heavy, and the mountain remained a threat. As he rode back to camp, Catelyn's words echoed, "If you fall, the North falters." At Riverrun, Eddard Stark stood on the battlements, his cloak snapping in the wind. The news of Robb's clashes with Clegane had reached him, a mix of pride and dread. His son was proving himself a leader, but the war's toll was mounting. Ned's focus was on the broader game, securing Arya, countering Tywin, and navigating the shifting allegiances of the South. The Raven from Dragonstone had confirmed Arya's safety under Stannis Baratheon's protection, but Stannis' demand for the North's fealty was a chain Ned could not accept. He had dispatched Sir Rodrik Cassel to Dragonstone, with a small party to retrieve Arya, bearing a letter. "The North thanks you for my daughter's safety, Lord Stannis, but we fight for our own. Return Arya and we'll discuss alliance, not submission." Ned knew Stannis would bristle, but Arya's freedom was worth the risk. Meanwhile, Lord Wylis Manderly's envoy to Renly Baratheon had returned with cautious optimism. Renly was open to an alliance, but he wanted the North to recognize his claim to the Iron Throne. Ned's reply was firm. "The North seeks friends, not kings. Join us against the Lannisters, and we'll stand together." Balon Greyjoy's raids on the North's coast were a growing thorn. Ned had sent ravens to Winterfell, ordering Bran and Maester Luwin to fortify the western shores and rally the coastal lords. The Ironborn were a distraction the North could ill afford, but Ned trusted Bran's growing wisdom and the loyalty of House Manderly to hold the line. Inside Riverrun's war room, Ned met with his council. Edmure Tully, flushed with the Ford's success, urged a bold strike on Harrenhal. Rose Bolton, his pale eyes unreadable, suggested sowing discord among Tywin's bannermen, turning their loyalty with gold or threats. Catelyn, back from Robb's camp, pressed for diplomacy, warning that the North's isolation could doom them. "We can't fight on every front," Ned said, his voice steady. "Tywin's the immediate threat. Robb's weakening Clegane, but we need to draw Tywin out of Harrenhal. Lord Bolton, intensify your raids, target his forges and granaries. Edmure, hold the fords, but prepare Riverrun for siege. If Tywin moves, we'll be ready." Catelyn's eyes met his, her voice low. "And Sansa?" Cersei's grip tightens. "We must act soon, Ned." Ned's heart ached. "Jaime's our leverage, but Cersei won't trade easily. We'll send another envoy to King's Landing, terms for a prisoner exchange. It's a long shot, but we keep the pressure on." As the council ended, a raven arrived from Winterfell, its message in Bran's halting script. "Father, I've seen things in dreams. A three-eyed crow, a darkness beyond the wall. Jojen Reed says it's coming. The coasts hold, but we need you." Ned's blood ran cold. Bran's visions, like Jon's reports from the wall, hinted at threats greater than Lannisters. But the South's war demanded his focus, for now. In King's Landing, the Red Keep was a cauldron of fear and ambition. Cersei Lannister sat in her solar, her goblet of arbor gold untouched. Gregor Clegane's failure to break the Riverlands had enraged her, and Tywin's terse letters from Harrenhal demanded results. Sansa Stark remained a hostage, her quiet defiance a growing irritation, while Arya's escape to Dragonstone was a humiliation Cersei could not forgive. Peter Baelish entered, his smirk as sharp as a blade. "Your Grace, the Starks grow bolder. Robb bloodies Clegane, and Ned rallies the North. But cracks form, some of their lords whisper of peace, tired of war." Cersei's eyes narrowed. "Then widen those cracks, Littlefinger. Buy their loyalty, spread lies, do whatever it takes. I want the North broken." Baelish bowed, his mind already spinning webs. He had agents in the Riverlands, men who could plant doubts among Robb's bannermen. The Greyjohn was loyal, but lesser lords like Rickard Karstark, grieving his lost sons, were vulnerable. A few whispers of Ned's treason or Robb's youth could fray the Stark alliance. Varys, ever the shadow, slipped in as Baelish departed. "Your Grace, a Stark envoy approaches under a flag of truce, offering terms for Jaime's release. They propose a prisoner exchange. Jaime for Sansa." Cersei's lip curled. "They think me desperate. Jaime's worth more than their girl. Send the envoy back with nothing but threats." Varys' expression was serene. "A refusal risks escalating the war, Your Grace. The Starks are not alone. Stannis harbors Arya, and Renly's army grows. A gesture of goodwill could divide your enemies." Cersei's fingers tightened around her goblet. "Goodwill? After they stole Jaime? No, Spider! Tighten Sansa's chains, and find a way to crush Stannis. I want Dragonstone burned. Varys bowed, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He had ensured Arya's escape, a calculated move to weaken the Lannisters. His true loyalty lay with the realm's future, with a Targaryen queen across the sea whose dragons grew stronger by the day. Cersei's rage was a tool, one he wielded carefully. Sansa in her chambers sat by a window, her needlework a mask for her racing thoughts. Joffrey's cruelty had worsened, his taunts laced with threats against her family. Yet the notes from her mysterious ally, "The wolf is safe. Hold fast." A friend kept her hope alive. She burned the latest, her fingers trembling. Arya was free, and her father and Robb fought on. Sansa would endure, a Stark in a den of lions. That night she overheard a maid whispering to a guard, "The Stark envoys at the gates. They're bold coming here." Sansa's heart leapt. Her family was close, their defiance a spark in her darkness. She resolved to watch, to listen, to find a way to aid them from within. On Dragonstone, Arya Stark stood on the castle's cliffs, the sea wind tearing at her ragged cloak. The island was a grim fortress, its black stone walls steeped in the weight of Targaryen history. Stannis Baratheon had granted her shelter, but his cold demeanor and Melisandre's fiery gaze made Arya wary. Gendry, her companion, worked in the castle's forge, his bastard blood a secret known only to a few. Stannis summoned Arya to the chamber of the painted table, his gaunt face unyielding. "Your father's envoy arrives soon, girl. He seeks your return, but I need the North's strength. Will Ned Stark bend the knee?" Arya's eyes blazed. "My father kneels to no one. He'll fight for me, for Sansa, for the North. If you want allies, fight with us, not over us." Stannis' jaw tightened. "You're bold for a child. But boldness won't win wars. Your name could rally the North to my cause. Serve me, and I'll protect your family." Arya's fists clenched. "I'm no servant. I'll help you fight the Lannisters. But I'm a Stark." Melisandre, standing in the shadows, spoke, her voice a low chant. "The Lord of Light has marked you, child. I see you in the flames, a wolf running through fire. Embrace your destiny, or it will consume you." Arya shivered, her thoughts on Needle, the sword Jon had given her hidden in her chambers. She trusted neither Stannis nor his priestess, but Dragonstone was a step toward her family. When Sir Roderick arrived, she would be ready. Davos Seaworth, watching from the sidelines, approached her later. "You're a brave one, Lady Stark. Stannis is hard, but he's just. Stick with me, and I'll see you to your father." Arya nodded, her heart a mix of hope and suspicion. "Just get me off this rock." Beyond the wall, Jon Snow and his rangers pressed through a frozen wilderness, the air thick with the threat of wildlings and worse. Ghost's hackles rose often, his red eyes scanning the shadows. Qhorin Halfhand led the party, his experience a guide through the treacherous terrain. Samwell Tarly, clutching his dragonglass dagger, struggled to keep pace, his fear tempered by loyalty to Jon. They found signs of Mance Rayder's host, campfires, tracks, abandoned gear, but the wildlings were elusive, melting into the forests. Qhorin's face grew grimmer with each day. "Mance is gathering more than men," he said. "There's talk of giants, mammoths, and things that shouldn't walk." Jon's thoughts were heavy. Bran's dreams, reported by Sam, spoke of a darkness beyond the wall, a threat tied to the old tales of the others. The white he'd fought at Castle Black haunted him, its blue eyes a warning of what might come. "If Mance unites the wildlings, he'll hit the wall hard," Jon said. "We need to know his plans." Qhorin's gaze was hard. "We may need to join them, Jon. Infiltrate, learn their strength. It's a hard choice, but survival demands it." Jon's heart rebelled. Betraying his vows, even as a ruse, went against everything Ned had taught him. Yet the Wall's safety, and the North's, depended on their mission. "I'll do what's needed," he said, though the words tasted bitter. That night, as they camped in a cave, Ghost growled, his fur bristling. Jon drew Longclaw, the Valyrian steel gleaming in the firelight. Shadows moved beyond the cave's mouth. Not wildlings, but something colder, something wrong. Qhorin's hand signaled silence, but Sam's gasp betrayed their position. A white lunged from the dark, its flesh gray and rotting, its eyes glowing blue. Jon's blade met it, Longclaw slicing through bone. Corrin and the others fought back, their steel barely slowing the creature. Sam, trembling, thrust his dragonglass dagger into the White's chest, and it collapsed, its light fading. The ranger stood panting, the cave thick with fear. "The others are real," Corrin said, his voice low. "We find Mance, or we're all dead." Jon nodded, his thoughts on his family. The Wall was his duty, but the Starks were his blood. If the others were waking, the wars of the South would mean nothing. At Riverrun, Ned prepared for the coming storm. Robb's return from the village battle brought relief, but the losses weighed heavily. The mountain had retreated, but Tywin's main army was moving, its shadow darkening the Riverlands. Ned's envoy to King's Landing had been rebuffed, Cersei's refusal a slap to their hopes for Sansa. A second raven from Dragonstone arrived, confirming Sir Roderick's arrival and Stannis' willingness to release Arya, for a price. Ned penned a reply, offering trade and mutual defense, but no fealty. He entrusted the mission to Catelyn, knowing her presence would reassure Arya and temper Stannis' demands. "Catelyn, bring our daughter home," Ned said, his voice rough with emotion. "But be wary. Stannis is no friend, and his priestess is dangerous." Catelyn's eyes were fierce. "I'll bring her back, Ned, for our family." As Catelyn departed, Ned turned to Robb, their bond at anchor in the chaos. "We've bought time, but Tywin's coming. We need a bold move. Draw him into a trap. Break his army before winter seals the passes." Robb's eyes gleamed. "The whispering wood-worked once. We can do it again. Lure Tywin to a ford. Flank him with our full strength." Ned nodded, pride swelling. "Plan it, Robb. I'll rally the reserves and coordinate with Edmure. But watch Bolton. His loyalty's thin." That night, Ned stood by the trident, ice at his side. Bran's dreams, Jon's warnings, and Varys' cryptic messages swirled in his mind. The realm was fracturing, and threats loomed beyond the Lannisters. Dragons in the east, shadows in the north. But Ned was a Stark. His honor a flame that would not gutter. A scout's horn broke his thoughts, Lannister banners on the horizon. Tywin was moving faster than expected. Ned's hand tightened on Ice's hilt. The war was here, and the Starks would meet it head-on. The Riverlands trembled under the weight of war, their rivers swollen with autumn rain, and their fields scarred by fire. Riverrun stood as a defiant bastion, its walls bristling with Stark and Tully banners. Eddard Stark and his son Robb, the young wolf, had crafted a desperate plan to break Tywin Lannister's advancing army. The Lannister host, bolstered by levies from Casterly Rock, marched toward the fords of the Trident, intent on crushing the rebellion. Ned and Robb aimed to lure them into a trap, using the river's currents and the North's cunning to turn the tide. Robb stood in Riverrun's war room, his gray eyes scanning a map marked with charcoal lines. "Tywin's main force is here," he said, pointing to a ford near the Red Fork. "He'll expect us to hold the crossing, but we let him advance. Draw him into the valley where our archers and cavalry wait." Ned nodded, his weathered face set with resolve. "It's a risk, Robb. If we misjudge his numbers or timing, we'll be overrun. But we've no choice. Tywin must be broken before winter seals the passes." Edmure Tully, eager to prove Riverrun's strength, gestured to the map. "My men have fortified the fords with stakes and trenches. We'll bleed them as they cross, then fall back to draw them deeper." Rose Bolton, his voice a soft hiss, leaned forward. "A sound plan, but Tywin is no fool. He'll send scouts to probe our flanks. We must blind him, kill his eyes before he sees the trap." Ned's gaze met Bolton's, a flicker of unease in his chest. The Lord of the Dreadfort was cunning, but his cold ambition was a shadow Ned could not ignore. "Agreed, Lord Bolton. Take your best men and eliminate Tywin's scouts, but report every move. Unity is our strength." Grey on Umber, towering over the table, roared his approval. "Let's gut the lion and send his cubs running for the north, for Lady Sansa." The hall echoed with cheers, but Ned's thoughts were with his daughters. Sansa, still a hostage in King's Landing, and Arya, safe on Dragonstone, but caught in Stannis Baratheon's web. Catelyn had sailed to retrieve Arya, a mission that weighed heavily on Ned's heart. Jaime Lannister, chained in Riverrun cells, was their only leverage, but Cersei's refusal to trade for Sansa had hardened Ned's resolve. As the council dispersed, Robb lingered, his voice low. "Father, if this fails, Tywin will march on Riverrun, and we're risking everything." Ned placed a hand on Robb's shoulder, his voice steady. "We have risked everything since I knelt in King's Landing. You've led well, Robb. Trust your instincts, and we'll see this through. That night, Ned stood on Riverrun's battlements, ice at his side. The trident's roar filled the air, a reminder of the battles to come. A raven from Winterfell had brought Bran's latest message. The three-eyed crow speaks of ice and fire. The wall weakens. Hurry, father. Ned's heart clenched. Bran's visions, paired with Jon's warnings from Castle Black, hinted at a threat beyond Tywin's armies, but the South's war demanded his focus, and he prayed Jon could hold the wall. At dawn, Robb led the vanguard at the ford, Grey Wind at his side. Ned remained at Riverrun, coordinating reserves and preparing for a siege. The trap was set. Now they waited for the Lion to step into it. The battle began with a Lannister probe, their cavalry testing the ford's defenses. Tully archers hidden in the willows loosed volleys that felled men and horses, while Edmure's spearmen held the crossing. Tywin, sensing weakness, committed his main force, his banners a sea of crimson and gold. Robb's men fell back as planned, luring the Lannisters into the valley. Then the trap sprang. Robb's cavalry, hidden in the hills, charged Tywin's flanks, their horns blaring. Grey Wind tore through the Lannister ranks, sowing chaos. Archers rained arrows from the ridges, and the river's current swept away men caught in the ford's churn. Tywin, astride his warhorse, rallied his knights, but the North's ferocity was unrelenting. Yet the Lion fought back. Tywin's reserves, led by Sir Adam Marbrand, struck Robb's left flank, threatening to break the encirclement. Robb, wielding his sword with deadly precision, rallied his men, but the cost was high. Greatjon Umber took a lance to the shoulder, and dozens fell to Lannister steel. As night fell, the battle hung in the balance. Tywin's army was bloodied, its cohesion fraying, but it had not broken. Robb withdrew to regroup, his face grim. "We have hurt them, father," he reported to Ned, his armor dented and bloodied. "But Tywin's pulling back to regroup. He'll come again." Ned's jaw tightened. "Then we hit him harder. Rest the men, but prepare for a dawn strike. We end this now, or we lose the Riverlands." On Dragonstone, Catelyn Stark stood before Stannis Baratheon in the chamber of the Painted Table, her auburn hair streaked with salt from the sea voyage. The castle's black stone walls loomed like a dragon's jaws, and Stannis' gaunt face was as unyielding as the rock. Melisandre, the Red Priestess, watched from the shadows, her eyes burning with zeal. Arya, small and fierce, stood at Catelyn's side, her ragged clothes a stark contrast to the chamber's grim opulence. "Lady Stark," Stannis said, his voice clipped, "your husband offers trade and defense, but I need the North's fealty. The Iron Throne is mine by right. Will Ned Stark bend the knee?" Catelyn's gaze was steady, her voice firm. "The North fights for its own, Lord Stannis. We thank you for Arya's safety, but we kneel to no king. Join us against the Lannisters, and we'll stand as equals." Stannis' jaw clenched, his fingers drumming on the table. "Equals? I am Robert's heir. Without my support, the North will fall to Tywin's armies." Arya's eyes blazed, her voice cutting through the tension. "My father and Robb are fighting now. They don't need your throne. They need your ships, your men. Help us, or you're no better than Joffrey." Melisandre's laugh was a low, eerie sound. "The child speaks with fire, my lord. The Lord of Light has marked her. Keep her close, and victory will follow." Catelyn's hand tightened on Arya's shoulder, her heart aching at her daughter's defiance. "Arya comes with me, Lord Stannis. Name your terms for alliance, but her freedom is not negotiable." Stannis' eyes narrowed, but Davos Seaworth, standing by his side, spoke up. "My lord, the Starks are honorable. Their fight weakens the Lannisters, which serves your cause. Let the girl go, and let's talk terms. Ships for grain, swords for gold." Stannis hesitated, his pride warring with pragmatism. Finally he nodded. "Very well. Arya Stark may leave with you, Lady Stark, but I expect Ned Stark's envoy to swear a pact. Mutual defense, trade routes through White Harbor, and the North's support against Renly Baratheon." Catelyn inclined her head, her mind racing. The terms were steep, but Arya's freedom was worth any price. "We'll convey your offer to Lord Stark. Expect our reply soon." As they prepared to depart, Arya clung to Catelyn, her fierce facade cracking. "Mother, is Sansa safe? Will father come for her?" Catelyn's throat tightened. "Your father and Robb are fighting for her, Arya. We'll bring her home, I swear it." Gendry, who had remained on Dragonstone, approached Arya, his hammer-calloused hands awkward. "Stay sharp, Aerie. If you need me, I'll be here, forging for Stannis. Arya nodded, a rare smile flickering. Don't get soft, Gendry. The voyage back to the Riverlands was stormy, the sea mirroring Catelyn's fears. Arya was safe, but Sansa remained in chains, and the war's outcome was uncertain. Stannis' alliance could tip the scales, but his rigidity was a risk. Catelyn prayed Ned and Robb could hold the Riverlands until she returned. In King's Landing, Cersei Lannister paced the Red Keep solar, her golden hair glinting in the torchlight. Tywin's army was locked in battle at the Trident, and Jaime's captivity gnawed at her like a wound. Sansa Stark's quiet defiance was a constant irritant, and Arya's escape to Dragonstone had humiliated her before the court. Joffrey's erratic cruelty only worsened matters, his tantrums alienating even loyal bannermen. Peter Baelish entered, his smirk a blade sheathed in silk. Your Grace, my agents in the Riverlands report success. Rickard Karstark's grief makes him ripe for betrayal. Whispers of Robb's recklessness have taken root. Other lords waver, tired of war. Cersei's eyes flashed. Then push hard a Littlefinger. Break the Starks' unity. If Tywin fails at the Trident, we'll need their alliance shattered. Baelish bowed, his mind spinning webs. He had planted seeds of doubt among Robb's bannermen, but his true game was deeper, tied to Sansa and the power she represented. The girl was a pawn, but one he intended to shape into a queen. Varys, gliding in as Baelish departed, offered his own counsel. Your Grace, Tywin's battle at the Trident hangs in the balance. A truce with the Starks could save Jaime and buy time to deal with Stannis and Renly. Cersei's goblet crashed to the floor. A truce? After they chained my brother? No, Spider. I want the North crushed. Find a way to turn Stannis against the Starks. Let them tear each other apart. Varys' expression remained serene, but his thoughts were with Daenerys Targaryen, whose dragons grew across the narrow sea. He had ensured Arya's escape to weaken Cersei, and now he played a subtler game, sowing discord to keep the realm unstable until the true queen returned. As you command, Your Grace, he said, bowing. Sansa in her chambers stitched a direwolf onto a scrap of cloth, her hands steadying despite her fear. Joffrey's latest taunt, a public humiliation before the court, had left her trembling, but the notes from her ally kept her strong. The wolf fights on. Be ready. A friend. She burned the latest, her heart racing. Her father and Robb were battling Tywin, and Arya was free. Sansa resolved to act, to find a way to aid her family from within. That night she slipped a note of her own under her door, addressed to the mysterious friend. I am ready. Tell me how to help. It was a risk, but Sansa was done being a helpless pawn. She was a Stark, and she would fight in her own way. Beyond the wall, Jon Snow and his rangers crept through a frozen forest, their breaths clouding in the frigid air. Ghost's red eyes scanned the shadows, his growls a constant warning. Qhorin Halfhand had led them to a wildling camp, a sprawling mass of tents and fires where Mance Rayder, the king beyond the wall, held court. The Rangers' mission was to learn Mance's plans, but the Whites' attack had shaken them, a reminder of threats older than any king. Qhorin's voice was low as they crouched in the snow. We can't fight them, Jon. Mance has thousands. Wildlings, giants, even mammoths. We join them, learn their strength, then report back. Jon's heart rebelled. Join them? That's desertion, Qhorin. My vows. Your vows won't save the wall if Mance breaks through, Qhorin cut in, his eyes hard. You're Ned Stark's son. Honor's in your blood, but survival's in your head. Do this, or we're all dead. Jon clenched his fists, the weight of his father's survival and Robb's war pressing on him. Bran's dreams of darkness, the White's blue eyes, all pointed to a threat the Night's Watch could not face alone. I'll do it, he said, the words bitter. But if it comes to betrayal, I'll die first. They let themselves be captured, their weapons surrendered to wildling scouts. Mance Rayder, a lean man with gray-streaked hair, met them in his tent, his eyes sharp with curiosity. A Stark bastard in the Halfhand, he said, his voice wry. What brings the crows to my fire? Jon met his gaze, his voice steady. The wall is weak and the others are waking. We'd rather fight with you than against you. Mance's laugh was a bark. Fight with us? You're spies, lad. But I'll give you a chance. Prove your worth and you live. Betray me and you'll feed the snow. Jon nodded, his thoughts on Ghost hidden in the woods. He would play Mance's game, learn his plans, and pray he could return to the wall with honor intact. But as he looked at the wildling host, men, women, children, all fleeing something darker than war, Jon felt a kinship he hadn't expected. The North was his home, but the wildlings were fighting for survival, just like the Starks. At Winterfell, Bran Stark sat in his chamber, his legs useless but his mind alive with visions. The three-eyed crow haunted his dreams, its voice a whisper of ice and fire. Jojen Reed, the Craningman boy, sat beside him, his green eyes distant. Mira, Jojen's sister, sharpened her spear, her presence a quiet strength. "The crow speaks of a great darkness," Bran said, his voice trembling. "It's beyond the wall, but it's coming south. Icy snow and eyes like blue stars." Jojen nodded, his face grave. "The others, Bran. The old tales are true. Your brother Jon's out there facing them. Your father and Robb fight in the south, but this war is bigger." Bran's hands gripped his chair. "I sent a raven to father, but what if he doesn't believe me? I'm just a boy." "You're a warg, a green seer," Jojen said. "Your dreams are power. Reach out, Bran. Find Jon. Warn him." Bran closed his eyes, his mind slipping into the dark. He felt Summer, his direwolf, running through Winterfell's Godswood, then pushed further north to the wall. His vision blurred, and he saw Jon, crouched in a wildling camp, Ghost at his side. A shadow moved behind him, not human but cold, its eyes glowing blue. "Jon!" Bran's voice echoed in the dream, and Jon's head snapped up, his eyes wide. The vision shattered, and Bran gasped, sweat beading on his brow. Jojen's hand steadied him. "You reached him, Bran! He knows!" Bran nodded, his heart racing. He would write to Ned again, urging him to look north. Winterfell was safe for now, the coastal lords holding against the Ironborn raids, but the true threat was coming, and Bran would not let it catch his family unawares. At Riverrun, the second day of the Trident battle dawned red, the sky bleeding with its promise of slaughter. Robb led the dawn strike, his cavalry sweeping down the valley to hit Tywin's regrouped forces. Ned, commanding from Riverrun, sent Edmure's reserves to reinforce the fords, ensuring Tywin could not retreat easily. Rose Bolton's men, fresh from eliminating Lannister scouts, joined the fray, their blades cutting through Tywin's rear. The battle was a maelstrom. Robb, astride his warhorse, fought with a ferocity that rallied his men, Grey Wind a white blur at his side. Tywin, his armor gleaming, directed his knights with ruthless precision, but the North's trap held. The river claimed hundreds, its currents dragging men to their deaths. Archers on the ridges rained death, and Robb's cavalry broke Tywin's left flank, scattering his levies. Yet Tywin's core held, his veterans refusing to break. Sir Adam Marbrand led a desperate charge, nearly reaching Robb, but Greyjohn Umber, wounded but roaring, cut him down. The tide turned when Rose Bolton's men struck Tywin's command tent, forcing the Lion to retreat or risk capture. As dusk fell, Tywin's army broke, its remnants fleeing toward Harrenhal. The Riverlands were saved, but the cost was staggering. Thousands dead, the Stark and Tully forces battered. Robb returned to Riverrun, his face haggard but triumphant. "We did it, father," he said, his voice hoarse. "Tywin's broken." Ned embraced him, pride warring with grief. "You've won a great victory, Robb, but Tywin's not finished. He'll lick his wounds and come again." A raven arrived that night, bearing Catelyn's seal. "Arya is with me. We sail for Riverrun. Stannis offers alliance, but his terms are steep." Catelyn. Ned's heart soared. Arya was coming home, but Stannis' demands and Tywin's retreat meant the war was far from over. Ned summoned his council, outlining the next steps. "We fortify the Riverlands, rebuild our strength, and prepare for Tywin's counterstroke. Robb, you'll lead the repairs. I'll meet Catelyn and Arya, then negotiate with Stannis. Sansa remains our priority. Jaime's our key, but we need a new approach." Robb nodded, his eyes older than his years. "We'll hold, father, for Sansa, for the North." As Ned prepared to ride, a second raven arrived, its message chilling. "Lord Karstark's men have deserted, citing your treason. Others waver. Beware betrayal." Maester Luwin, Ned's blood ran cold. Baelish's schemes were working, sowing discord among his lords. The Starks had won a battle, but the war was a hydra, each victory spawning new threats. Ned stood by the trident, ice gleaming in the moonlight. Sansa was in chains. Jon faced horrors beyond the wall, and Bran's visions spoke of doom. Tywin, Stannis, Balon Greyjoy, and whispers of dragons loomed like storm clouds. But Ned was a Stark. His honor a fire that would not die. Winter was coming, and he would meet it with steel and blood. The Riverlands, battered but unbowed, stood as a testament to the Stark's resilience. Riverrun's walls gleamed under a pale winter sun, its halls alive with the reunion of Eddard Stark and his daughter Arya. Catelyn, her auburn hair streaked with grey from the strain of war, had returned with Arya from Dragonstone, their embrace a fleeting moment of joy in a world of strife. Robb, the young wolf, stood taller, his victory over Tywin Lannister at the Trident a beacon for the North, though the cost in blood haunted his grey eyes. Jaime Lannister remained a prisoner, a key to freeing Sansa, still chained in King's Landing's gilded cage. Ned stood in Riverrun's war room, the map before him a scarred record of their struggle. Tywin's army, broken at the Trident, had retreated to Harrenhal, but the line was not defeated. Balon Greyjoy's Ironborn raided the North's coasts, a thorn that bled their resources. Stannis Baratheon's offer of alliance hung heavy, his demand for fealty a price Ned would not pay. And from Winterfell, Bran's ravens spoke of a darkness beyond the wall, a threat that dwarfed the wars of men. "We've won a battle, but not their war," Ned said, his voice steady despite the weight on his shoulders. "Tywin will regroup and Cersei holds Sansa. We must act swiftly to free her and secure the North." Robb, his armor still dented from the Trident, nodded. "Jaime's our leverage, but Cersei's refused every offer. We need a new approach. Something bold." Catelyn, her eyes fierce with a mother's love, spoke up. "We send an envoy to King's Landing, but not with terms. We demand Sansa's release, backed by the threat of Jaime's execution. It's a bluff, but Cersei doesn't know that." Arya, seated cross-legged on a bench, her ragged clothes replaced with stark gray, snorted. "Cersei's a snake. She'll call the bluff unless we show her we mean it. Let me go. I can slip into the city, find Sansa." Ned's heart clenched at Arya's defiance, so like his own. "No, Arya. You've escaped King's Landing once. I won't risk you again, but your idea has merit. We need eyes in the city, someone to aid Sansa from within." Rose Bolton, his pale eyes glinting, leaned forward. "A small party, disguised as merchants, could infiltrate King's Landing. My men are skilled in such work. They could carry a message to Lady Sansa, prepare her for rescue." Ned's unease with Bolton deepened, but the plan was sound. "Very well, Lord Bolton. Choose your men, but they answer to me. Robb, draft the envoy's letter. Demand Sansa's release within a fortnight, or Jaime faces trial for his crimes." Greyjoy Umber, his shoulder bandaged but his spirit unbroken, roared, "And if Cersei refuses, we march on the capital. Let's end this!" The hall cheered, but Ned raised a hand. "We have no army to storm King's Landing, Lord Umber. Tywin's still a threat, and the Ironborn harry our coasts. We play this smart, or we lose everything." As the council dispersed, Ned pulled Catelyn aside, his voice low. "Stannis' terms are a trap. If we ally with him, we lose the North's freedom, but his ships could counter Balon's raids. What did you learn on Dragonstone?" Catelyn's face tightened. "Stannis is rigid, driven by duty, but his priestess Melisandre is dangerous. She sees visions in flames, speaks of a chosen one. Arya unsettled her. She called her a wolf in fire. We need Stannis' strength, but we must keep him at arm's length." Ned nodded, his thoughts racing. Bran's visions, Jon's warnings, and now Melisandre's prophecies, all pointed to a storm beyond the Lannisters. But Sansa's freedom was his immediate duty. "We'll send a reply to Stannis, trade and mutual defense, but no fealty, and we prepare for Tywin's next move." That night a raven from Winterfell arrived, Bran's script trembling. "The crow shows me ice and death. Jon's in danger. The wall will fall if we don't act." Ned's blood ran cold. Jon, his son in all but name, was beyond the wall, facing horrors Ned could scarcely imagine. He penned a letter to Castle Black, urging the Night's Watch to reinforce their defenses, and another to Bran, promising to heed his warnings. But the South's war demanded his focus, and Ned prayed Jon could hold until the Starks could turn north. In King's Landing, the Red Keep was a nest of fear and treachery. Cersei Lannister sat on the Iron Throne in Joffrey's absence, her golden hair a crown of defiance. Tywin's defeat at the Trident had shaken her, and Jaime's captivity was a wound that festered. Sansa Stark, her quiet strength a growing threat, remained a hostage, while Arya's escape to Dragonstone was a humiliation Cersei could not forgive. Petter Baelish entered the throne room, his smirk a blade cloaked in silk. "Your Grace, my agents report progress. Rickard Karstark's desertion has weakened Robb Stark's host, and other lords waver. A few more whispers, and the North fractures." Cersei's eyes gleamed with malice. "Good, Littlefinger. Push harder, offer gold, titles, anything to turn their lords, and find a way to crush Stannis. His harboring of Arya is a slap to our house." Baelish bowed, his mind a web of schemes. Sansa was his prize, a key to power he intended to wield. He had intercepted her note. "I am ready. Tell me how to help," and saw opportunity. She was no longer the naive girl he'd met. She was learning the game, and he would guide her for his own ends. Varys, gliding in as Baelish departed, offered his silken counsel. "Your Grace, a Stark envoy approaches, demanding Lady Sansa's release or Jaime's life. They're desperate but united. A truce could save your brother and weaken Stannis' claim." Cersei's lip curled. "A truce? After they broke Tywin's army? No, Spider. I want the Starks destroyed. Double the guard on Sansa, and send word to Tywin. Strike Riverrun before they recover." Varys bowed, his expression serene. His true loyalty lay with Daenerys Targaryen, whose dragons grew in the east. He had aided Sansa with anonymous notes, nudging her toward defiance, and now he sowed discord to keep the realm unstable. "As you command, Your Grace." Sansa in her chamber sat by a candle, her needlework a mask for her racing heart. Joffrey's latest cruelty, a public flogging of a servant who'd spilled her wine, had hardened her resolve. The notes from her ally. "The wolf's envoy comes. Act when the time is right." A friend were a lifeline. She had sent a note in return, and now she waited, her mind sharp with purpose. That night a servant slipped her a new message. "The envoy arrives tomorrow. 'Cause of distraction, fire in the stables, allies will move for you." A friend. Sansa's breath caught. It was a risk, but her family was close, their strength of fire in her veins. She resolved to act, to be the spark that freed her. At dawn, the Stark envoy, a grizzled Northman named Sir Haryon Karstark, loyal despite his lord's desertion, stood before the Iron Throne. His voice was iron. "Release Lady Sansa, or Sir Jaime Lannister faces justice for his crimes. You have a fortnight." Cersei's smile was venomous. "You dare threaten me! Your wolf pup is nothing compared to my brother. Take your empty words and crawl back to Riverrun." Sir Haryon's eyes burned, but he bowed and departed. Sansa, watching from the gallery, felt a surge of pride. Her family was fighting, and she would not fail them. That night she stole a flint from the kitchens and hid it in her sleeve, her heart pounding with the weight of her plan. Beyond the wall, Jon Snow stood among Mance Rayder's wildling host, his black cloak a lie he wore uneasily. Ghost, hidden in the woods, was his only anchor to the Night's Watch. Qhorin Halfhand and the other rangers played their parts, blending into the camp, but Jon's heart was a storm of doubt. He had joined Mance to learn his plans, but the wildlings' desperation, men, women, children fleeing a darkness in the north, echoed his own fears for his family. Mance, the king beyond the wall, summoned Jon to his tent, his gray eyes sharp. "You're Ned Stark's bastard, yet you kneel to crows. Why join us now?" Jon's voice was steady, though his vows burned in his chest. "The others are coming. I've seen their whites. The wall can't hold alone. Let us fight together." Mance's laugh was wry. "You're honest, I'll give you that. But trust is earned, lad. My people follow strength. Prove yourself. Join a raid on a crow patrol. Bring me their blades and we'll talk." Jon's blood ran cold. Betraying his brothers, even as a ruse, was a line he dreaded crossing. But Qhorin's words echoed. Survival demands it. "I'll do it," Jon said, his voice hollow. The raid was a blur of snow and steel. Jon led a small band of wildlings, their spears and axes crude but deadly. The Night's Watch patrol, 5 men, strangers to Jon, was caught unawares. Jon fought with restraint, wounding rather than killing, but the wildlings showed no mercy. When the clash ended, Jon stood over the bodies, their swords in his hands, his heart heavy with guilt. Mance, inspecting the blades, nodded. "You've earned a place, Snow. But I'm watching. Betray me, and you'll wish the others had you." That night, Jon slipped away to find Ghost. His direwolf's warmth a balm to his shame. In the dark, he felt Bran's presence, a fleeting vision of his brother's face, warning of blue-eyed death. Jon whispered to the wind. "I'll come back, Bran. I swear it." But as he returned to the camp, a wildling scout brought grim news. A white had been sighted, its tracks leading south. Mance's face hardened. "The dead are walking, Snow. If you're true, you'll fight them with us?" Jon nodded. His thoughts on the wall, on Ned, on the Starks. The others were coming, and his ruse was a fragile shield against the storm. At Riverrun, Ned prepared for the next phase of the war. Catelyn and Arya's return had lifted the North's spirits, but Sansa's captivity and Tywin's regrouping army cast long shadows. The envoy to King's Landing had been rebuffed, and Bolton's men, sent to infiltrate the city, had yet to report. Ned's alliance with Stannis hung by a thread, his reply offering trade but no fealty. Balon Greyjoy's raids continued, though Bran's efforts at Winterfell held the coasts. A raven from Castle Black arrived, its message urgent, wildlings massed beyond the wall. White sighted, send aid, or the North falls. Jor Mormont. Ned's heart sank. Jon was out there facing horrors Ned could scarcely fathom. He sent a reply, promising men and supplies, but the Riverlands war tied his hands. Catelyn, watching Ned's face, took his hand. "Jon's strong, Ned. Like you. He'll hold until we can help." Ned's voice was rough. "I've asked too much of him, Catelyn. Of all my children. Sansa's our focus now. We free her, then turn north." Arya, eavesdropping, stepped forward, her eyes fierce. "Let me help, father. I can fight and sneak anything. Sansa needs us." Ned knelt, his hands on her shoulders. "You're home, Arya. Your courage kept you alive, but this is my fight now. Stay with your mother. Help Robb. The North needs you here." Arya's lip trembled, but she nodded. Ned rose, his resolve hardening. He summoned Robb, outlining a desperate plan. "We send a small force to King's Landing. Not an army, but a strike team. Bolton's men will guide them. If Sansa's allies act, we'll extract her under cover of chaos." Robb's eyes gleamed. "I'll lead it, father, for Sansa." Ned shook his head. "You're needed here, Robb. Tywin's coming, and Riverrun can't fall. I'll go." Catelyn's protest was sharp. "Ned, you're the North's heart. If you fall—" "I won't," Ned said, his voice firm. "Sansa's my daughter. I'll bring her home." As Ned prepared, a second raven arrived, its message chilling. Karstark's betrayal spreads. Houses Dustin and Ricewell waver. Hold the Lords, or lose the North. Maester Luwin. Baelish's schemes were unraveling the Stark alliance, and Ned knew time was running out. In King's Landing, Sansa Stark acted. At midnight she slipped from her chambers, the flint hidden in her sleeve. The Red Keep's stables were quiet, the horses restless under the moon. Her heart pounded as she struck the flint, sparks catching on a pile of hay. Flames leapt and she fled, her cloak blending with the shadows. The fire spread, alarms ringing through the keep. Guards rushed to the stables, leaving Sansa's corridor lightly watched. She returned to her chambers, her breath ragged but her resolve unbroken. The distraction was set. Now she waited for her allies. Bolton's men, disguised as merchants, had infiltrated the city, their leader a lean killer named Locke. They carried Ned's message. "When the fire burns, move to the tower. We come for you." As the stables blazed, Locke's team slipped into the Red Keep, their knives silent but deadly. They reached Sansa's tower, dispatching 2 guards with brutal efficiency. Sansa, hearing a soft knock, opened her door, her eyes wide. Locke's face was hard, but his voice was low. "Lady Stark, your father's men are near. Come now, or we're all dead." Sansa nodded, her heart a drumbeat. She followed Locke through the keep's maze, the fire's chaos masking their movements. But fate was cruel. Sir Meryn Trant, alerted by Varys' spies, intercepted them in a courtyard, his sword drawn. "Traitors!" Meryn roared, his men closing in. Locke fought like a demon, his knife gutting one guard, but Meryn's sword was relentless. Sansa, clutching a dagger from Locke's belt, stabbed a guard's leg, her hands trembling but her aim true. The clash was brutal, and Locke fell, his throat opened by Meryn's blade. Sansa ran, her lungs burning until a hand grabbed her, a familiar face. The Hound, Sandor Clegane. His scarred face was grim. "Little bird, you're mad to run now. Come with me, or you're dead." Sansa hesitated, fear warring with trust. "Why help me?" The Hound's laugh was bitter. "I'm done with Lannisters. Move!" He led her through the city's alleys, the fire's glow lighting their path. At the docks, Ned waited with a small boat, his face a mask of relief and fear. "Sansa," he whispered, pulling her into his arms. The hound stepped back, his eyes on the burning city. "Go, Stark, I'm no hero." Ned nodded, gratitude unspoken. The boat slipped into the black water, Sansa clinging to her father as King's Landing receded. She was free, but the war was not over. Beyond the wall, Jon Snow faced his reckoning. Mance Rayder's host prepared to march south, their numbers swelled by clans and giants. Jon had earned Mance's trust, but the white sighting had shifted the wildlings' purpose. They fled not just for conquest, but survival, the other's shadow driving them. Mance called Jon to his tent, his face grim. "The dead are close, Snow. My scouts found a village, empty but for tracks that freeze the blood. Fight with us or stand aside." Jon's heart raced. "I'll fight the dead, Mance, but the wall's my home. Let me speak for you to the Watch. Unite us against the others." Mance's eyes narrowed. "You'd turn crow again? Prove it. Lead a parley to the wall. If they listen, we talk. If not, we break through." Jon nodded, his thoughts on Ghost, on Bran's warning. He led a small party to the wall, Mance's banner beside him. At Castle Black, Jorah Mormont met him, his face a mix of relief and suspicion. "Jon, you've walked a dark path," Mormont said. "Why bring wildlings here?" Jon's voice was urgent. "The others are coming, Lord Commander. I've seen their whites. Mance's host can fight with us or against us. Let them through, or we all die." Mormont hesitated, his eyes on the wildling banners. Before he could answer, a horn sounded. 3 blasts, the signal for whites. The night erupted in chaos, blue-eyed dead swarming from the snow. Jon drew Longclaw, Ghost at his side, and fought, his blade a beacon in the dark. Mance's wildlings joined the fray, their spears and axes holding the line. Jon saved Mormont's life, cutting down a white, and earned a grudging nod. When dawn broke, the whites were gone, but the wall was bloodied, its men shaken. Mormont clasped Jon's arm. "You've proven yourself, Snow. The wildlings can pass, but they answer to me." Jon nodded, relief flooding him. He had kept his vows, however bent, and the wall stood. But the others were coming, and he knew his fight was just beginning. At Riverrun, Ned's return with Sansa was a moment of light in the darkness. Catelyn, Robb, and Arya embraced her, the Stark family reunited save for Jon, far at the wall. The North's lords, shaken by Karstark's betrayal, rallied to Ned's banner, their loyalty renewed by Sansa's rescue. Roose Bolton, his role in the infiltration unquestioned, watched with a thin smile, his ambitions hidden. Tywin Lannister, enraged by Sansa's escape, marched on Riverrun, his army diminished but still formidable. Ned and Robb prepared for a final stand, their forces bolstered by Tully levies and stark resolve. Stannis, accepting Ned's terms of trade, sent ships to harry Balon Greyjoy's fleet, easing the North's coastal threat. The battle at Riverrun was fierce but decisive. Robb, leading the vanguard, outmaneuvered Tywin's knights, while Ned's reserves held the castle's walls. Arya, defying orders, slipped into the fray, her knife saving a Tully man's life. Sansa, no longer a delicate lady, tended the wounded, her strength a quiet fire. Catelyn coordinated supplies, her presence a rock for the defenders. Tywin, seeing his army falter, retreated, his pride shattered. Jaime, released in a final gesture to end the war, rode south, his swagger dimmed. The Riverlands were secure, the North unbroken. Ned gathered his family in Riverrun's hall, his voice heavy with purpose. "We have won, but the cost is high. Jon faces a greater threat at the wall, and Bran's visions warn of ice and fire. We go north to Winterfell to stand as one." Robb nodded, his eyes on his sisters. "The North is ours, father. We'll face whatever comes." Sansa, her hands clasped with Arya's, spoke softly. "I'm not afraid anymore. We're Starks." Arya grinned, her fierceness undimmed. "Winter's coming, and we're ready." Catelyn's smile was weary but proud. "For our family, for the North." Ned looked at them, his heart full. Across the sea, dragons stirred, and beyond the wall, shadows walked. But the Starks endured, their bond of fire against the cold. He raised ice, its blade catching the light. "Winter is coming," he said, "and we'll meet it together." In Winterfell, Bran sat in the Godswood, his eyes distant. The three-eyed crow's voice was clear now, speaking of a balance, fire in the east, ice in the north. He saw Jon leading wildlings and crows against a tide of whites. He saw a silver-haired queen, her dragons roaring, and he saw his family united, their direwolf banners flying over snowbound land. Bran smiled, his hand on Summer's fur. The Starks were scattered no more. Whatever came, dragons, others, or the wars of men, they would face it as one. The wind whispered through the heart tree, and Bran heard its song. The North remembers.